I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and welcome to the meeting of Wednesday, June 5th. Before we take public comment tonight, I would like to read the press release from the fire department concerning the false alarm activation of tsunami sirens due to mechanical issue. So this was released today. And it says early Wednesday morning on June 5th, 2024 at approximately 6 a.m. The tsunami siren located at the Cannon Beach Fire Station was self-activated due to a mechanical issue. The siren that was heard in Midtown this morning was isolated to the Midtown siren. This appears to have been caused by a failure of a control board in that siren tower. The only way to stop it was to access the control panel located near the top of the tower and physically turn it off. This appears to be unrelated to the planned work on the system, rather reiterates the reason that the contractors are here this week to work on the system. In an actual emergency, well tones varying from a low to high warble sound, followed by evacuation instructions, will be heard. The testing tones are audible CAL sounds. In 2022, Cannon Beach Fire District signed an agreement with the city of Cannon Beach to transfer operations and maintenance of the system to the city. There are a multitude of upgrades in the process that will improve the system to be utilized for other emergencies besides tsunamis. Due to the tsunami system's age, it makes it difficult to find parts. We would like to send our sincerest apologies for the accidental activation and any stress that it may have caused. We also prefer having our morning coffee with the melody of birds chirping instead of a screaming siren. During this time, if there are any questions about the tsunami system, please contact the city of Cannon Beach. The Cannon Beach Fire District is dedicated to protecting life, property, and the environment for those who are living in and visiting the communities we proudly serve. So I would like to also thank everyone for their patience, and may we all sleep better tonight. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make public comment that isn't related to any of our hearing items this evening? If you would raise your hand.
You want to officially move public comments?
Okay, I will now move public comment to the end of the meeting. Except for people for the hearing.
That's the
items.
same girls. Do you recognize the voice?
Yeah.
Thought I did.
Yeah,
Okay.
the stupid giggle and,
What
yeah.
address did she give?
132 Arbor Lane.
How close is that to you?
Huh?
What? Okay,
Which went fantastic. I recognized it.
so now we will move on to a proclamation. Proclamation 2410 Tufted Puffin Month. And Kelly is here with a special guest.
Maybe this. Okay, so we have presented for council a recommendation to adopt the proclamation 2410, tufted name June 2024 Tufted Puffin Month. This would be the fourth year in a row that we would be declaring June as Tufted Puffin Month. This originally began in 2021 as a request from the Friends of Haystack Rock Board after a follow-up to the tufted puffin, our beloved species that nests here at Haystack Rock, being denied the Endangered Species Act protections from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. And they declared the year 2021 as year of the puffin to bring attention to the plights of the tufted puffin, as well as the declining population that we are experiencing here in Oregon and all along the California current in Washington and California as well. And to bring focus to all the efforts that we have going on in town to bring attention to this and to address the issue. And so we are continuing that trend in recognizing June as Tufted Puffin Month. and bring awareness to more of the ongoing efforts and successes and continued work that needs to be done in protecting this beloved species.
I move to adopt the proclamation. I move to adopt proclamation 2410 for the purpose of proclaiming June 2024 as Tufted Puffin Month in the city of Cannon Beach.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, so we will go ahead and read the proclamation.
And would you do it with that nice voice?
I bet Lisa would love to do it.
Well, I would love to, but I just I like his
Okay.
voice. So.
Okay. Brandon with the golden voice.
The
Please.
Apparently
the
so.
golden pipes.
Before the city of Cannon Beach, for the purpose of proclaiming June 2024 as Tufted Puffin Month, proclamation number 2410. Whereas tufted puffins are an iconic species that can be seen from April to August on Haystack Rock, where they breed and raise puffings. Is that right? Pufflings?
Yes.
Before heading back out to sea for the winter. And whereas the tufted puffin population faces numerous threats and challenges, including pollution in our ocean waters, invasive species that impact their breeding habitats and nests, bycatch, climate change, causing ocean temperatures to rise and forage fish moving further north to cooler waters, and lack of food due to overfishing. And whereas more research is required to uncover mysteries in the tufted puffin life history, such as what they do out at sea during winter, and whereas organizations such as Friends of Haystack Rock, as well as Haystack Rock Awareness Program, and a number of public and private partners work to support research, educate the public, and advocate for protections of this and other Cannon Beach species. And whereas Friends of Haystack Rock has events planned through the spring and summer, working in partnership with Haystack Rock Awareness Program to promote education, awareness, and conservation of tufted puffins, including welcome back puffins and puffin watches. And whereas thousands of people observe tufted puffins each year while visiting our beautiful beaches that are shared resources between wildlife and people. And therefore, be it resolved that the city of Cannon Beach proclaim June 2024 as Tufted Puffin Month, honoring tufted puffins and those that seek to protect them. Further, that we stand united in our commitment to protect and conserve this iconic species so that current and future residents and visitors can enjoy in their breeding range and Cannon Beach for many years to come, and encourage others to learn more about this incredible species and do what is possible to protect them in their habitat. Passed by the Common Council of the City of Cannon Beach this 5th day of June, 2024 by the following roll call vote.
Thank you, Brandon.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Kelly.
the support.
Thanks.
Thanks, Guy.
Bye-bye.
It's a puffin.
A little
Yeah.
puffing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, next we will move into a public hearing. And this is a public hearing APP 1, the Burton appeal. This is a hearing regarding the appeal by Brent Burton of Planning Commission's denial of SR 2401 application reduction to required front yard setback from 15 feet to 5 feet in order to construct a single family dwelling on an undeveloped lot located near the intersection of South Hemlock and Center Streets. The subject property, tax lot 04302, map 51030D, is located in a residential low density RL zone. The request will be reviewed under Municipal Code Section 1764-010 setback reduction. Has the council determined on May 14th, the city council's role in this appeal is to review the record of the proceedings before the planning commission, along with the appeal documents, public hearing, considering solely the evidence already in the record. In making this decision, the commission must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. So I would like to open the public hearing and ask, does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the city council to hear this appeal at this time? Members of the city council are to be unbiased. Councilors believe they are biased or have any potential conflicts such as family, financial, or business relationships with any of the applicants or with regard to the property or proposal in question. Have any councilors discussed the application in question with any of the parties or have independent knowledge of relevant facts such as from a visit to the site in question?
Site visit.
Site visit.
Site
Visit.
Okay. Again, this review is limited to the record, so any facts resulting from an independent site visit may not be considered of this appeal. Does any member of the audience wish to question any counselor about these disclosures? Is there any additional correspondence?
Yeah, we've received a couple of letters, Mr. Burton and a couple of his representatives. So the planning department has received additional written testimony in support of this appeal that were not included in the agenda packet. I think we've submitted some of that testimony to you. These material included an email from the adjacent owner, Jeff Taylor, dated May 29th, including new facts relating to the view, an email and geotechnical response from representatives of Earth Engineers dated June 3rd, an email and a letter from Michael McEwen, the president of Bob McEwen Construction, Inc., dated June 4th, and an email and letter from the appellant Brett Burton dated June 4th that includes copies of all the above listed documents as well as photographs as attachment. City staff has reviewed these materials and in consultation with the city's attorney, the letter from Mr. Burton along with the attachments identify new facts that Mr. Burton believes shows that the applicable criteria have been satisfied. These new facts were not considered by the Plan Commission, and as such, the staff has highlighted those portions of these documents that staff believes contains new evidence. Assuming that the council agrees with the city attorney's evaluation, it would be appropriate for council to make a motion and vote to reject the highlighted components of the Burton letter and as separately submitted, and to expressly not consider these materials highlighted as part of the council's deliberation of this matter. If the council agrees, we look for a motion such as the motion to reject those portions of the written testimony highlighted and identified by city staff from the record, and the council shall not consider them as part of this review.
Where's the piece of paper with it? What's written? Okay. Okay, I make a motion to reject those portions of the written testimony highlighted and identified by city staff. And I'll consider them as part of the review. And one about the new materials.
I think that's, that would, yes.
Okay, that's the motion I make. This is a review on the record.
I'm willing to second it, but this is the time when we actually make the motion, or would that be a recommendation to make it at the time for making our final decision?
I thought he wanted it now.
Just asking for clarification.
Carrie?
I,
Hi.
my recommendation is that you do it now as part of the procedural formalities before you get into the hearing, so that everybody who is participating understands what is in the record and what you will be considering to date.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Thank
So
you.
I'd appreciate, if you take a vote on the procedural issue, then you move on to the substance of the staff report.
Makes a lot more sense. Now, so I'll second your motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
Curious about exhibit A3. Was that not part of the original packet, or is that some kind of update? Dated from Matt Taylor, dated May 29.
Yeah, that was updated information. Mr. Taylor had provided testimony or written materials during the Plan Commission hearing. And at that point in time, it was just a letter of support. What we're talking about here is there's a little bit of information that talks about preserving our view from the southwest that was not really incorporated in those discussions at that time per his letter.
Okay, I recall reading that. I was just wondering where it came into the scheme of things. So it was probably submitted to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council President McCarthy,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, so next I would like to request the staff report.
Okay. All right, at their March 28th, 2024 meeting, the Plan Commission rendered a decision to deny application SR 2401, which was a setback reduction application by Mr. Burton for an undeveloped lot near the intersection of South Hemlock and Center Streets. Mr. Burton requested review of that decision in a notice of appeal received on April 16th, 2024, within the 14 consecutive calendar day appeal period from the date the Planning Commission rendered its decision. The City Council held a scope of review meeting as a non-public hearing item on May 14th, 2024, and determined that the appeal would be heard on the record of the decision made by the Plan Commission. The applicant is requesting a setback reduction of the required front yard from 15 feet to 5 feet for the construction of a new single-family dwelling. The subject property has a parcel average slope in excess of 30%, and the applicant's intent is to construct the house on a portion of the lot with the least slope. The application materials included a conceptual house plan and site perspectives, site plans showing the topographic lines, and the proposed building envelope. The topographic lines show a steep slope on the western half of the property, and the application proposed positioning the house on the eastern portion of the lot where the slopes were less significant. The criteria evaluated include the RL residential lower density zoning district standards outlined in Municipal Code 17.10.040 and the setback reduction standards of 17.64. The plans are conceptual and provide a general overview of the proposed development. App comments with regards to the criteria that are listed in the RL lower density zoning district. Conceptual plans showing the proposed location of the residence, driveway, and off-street parking have been provided. The proposed site plan also includes information about topography and shows elevation lines. Prior to issuance of a building permit, city staff will review a development application for compliance with established standards for the zoning district, including criteria such as the inclusion of a geological hazard report specific to the proposed development, building height, lot coverage, floor area ratio, and off-street parking requirements. With regards to section 17.64 setback reduction, there's several comments here. So based on the information in the record, the Plan Commission found that there was insufficient information to determine that the applicant met several of the criteria in the setback reduction section. Section 17.64.010A2. This criteria requires an applicant to ensure that significant views of the ocean, mountain, or similar features from nearby properties will not be obstructed any more than would occur if the proposed structure were located at the required zoning district. The commission found that although there are no identified impacts to view from surrounding homes that would result from the proposed setback reduction, there may be impacts to views of Haystack Rock from South Hemlock Street, and accordingly, the commission found that the applicant did not meet that criteria. The applicant appealed that conclusion, asserting that the commission misinterpreted this criteria, first noting that the criteria calls for a comparison of views between 1, development within the existing setback, and 2, development with the requested setback. The applicant argues that nothing in the record suggests, much less demonstrates, that the application would create any greater effects on views. The burden is on the applicant to demonstrate that the applicant application meets all the applicable criteria, and the council should review the record and determine whether the commission was correct in concluding that the applicant did not carry its burden regarding demonstrating that significant views will not be obstructed anymore as a result of the setback reduction. Criteria 17.64010A4. This criteria requires an application for a setback reduction to achieve one or more of 8 specified objectives. The application asserted that the setback reduction would achieve both A4B and A4E. Let's see here. I'll go through those in a minute, I'm sorry. The commission found that so these were protecting neighboring views and permit construction on a lot with unusual configuration. The commission found that the adjustment would not achieve the view protection as discussed above, and that the unusual configuration identified by the applicant was not justified. The unusual configuration identified by the applicant was the steep slopes on the western portion of the property, but the commission noted that the application did not include supporting information such as a preliminary geotechnical report identifying potential impacts that may result from the significant amounts of excavation or grading. The commission also noted that the application did not analyze potential impacts on the stability of South Hemlock Street right-of-way or address any potential impacts to trees along the eastern portion of the property or within the South Hemlock Street right-of-way that may result from the setback reduction. The applicant appealed that conclusion, arguing that the commission misinterpreted the criteria and that the findings does not reference any criteria in the code section, and that there is nothing within 17.64.010 that relates to a geotechnical information to setback reduction, while recognizing that the geotechnical information will be submitted during the building permit process. Moreover, the applicant argues that nothing in the code section requires an applicant to protect all trees on the property, and the uncontroverted evidence in the evidence demonstrates that the request will not impact privacy of neighbors. The council should review the information by the applicant and determine whether the commission was correct in determining that the applicant did not carry the burden to demonstrate that granting a setback reduction would achieve any of the purposes identified. Criteria 17.64.0105. This criteria requires an applicant to demonstrate that the adjacent right-of-way have sufficient width for utility placement or other public purpose. The commission found that the 6-inch diameter PVC water main runs north to south through the western portion of South Hemlock right-of-way. Commission found that the placement of a residential structure within 5 feet of the eastern property line may not provide sufficient space for Public Works Department to excavate in order to access utility infrastructure when necessary to do so. The applicant appealed this conclusion, arguing that the commission misinterpreted, or misapplied this criteria. The applicant notes that the city already has improved South Hemlock to the width identified in the city's transportation plan, and the commission cited nothing to suggest that the city intends for setbacks to preserve access to public facilities in the adjacent rights of way. The council should review the commission's determination that this application did not meet this particular requirement. And the recommendation was from the plan commission was that the setback reduction request be denied, and the council should review the code and the applicant's arguments and when determining whether or not the plan commission's decision was correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to call for public testimony. The appeal will be reviewed under municipal code section 17.64.010 setback reduction. The hearing will be held on the record and no new evidence will be allowed into record. The pertinent criteria to be considered are identified in the staff report, which was made available to the public 7 days in advance of this hearing. Staff has analyzed the appeals issues relying on the reasoning set forth in the Planning Commission's decision. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the mayor, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. All testimony is limited to matters which were raised at the Planning Commission hearing in writing or orally No new evidence or facts will be considered. Testimony must be directed towards those criteria or other criteria in which the person testifying believes to apply to this decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or references to records evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Is there a presentation by the applicant? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Brent Burton, and I'm the applicant in this case. And I think you've heard the staff report, so you
Could
understand.
we also get your mailing address?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And I knew that. P.O. Box 1938, North Plains, Oregon 97133.
Okay, thank you.
And you're aware from the staff report that I applied for a setback reduction for my property at 1980 South Hemlock. And that application was denied at the Planning Commission meeting on the 28th of March 2024. And after we got word of the denial, we analyzed the findings, and you heard in the staff report our assertion that there were basically three elements that were misidentified, misapplied. And I'd like to run through those specifically. Number one is the view issue. And you heard in the staff report that there was an objection that we didn't consider the impact of views to the ocean from adjacent properties, number one. But the Planning Commission added in analysis of views from Hemlock Street, which would apply to an anonymous person or somebody walking down the street or driving down the street, that their view would be impaired by building a house there with a setback reduction. And of course, there's nothing in the code to indicate that. The code specifies that it's nearby properties. And we have specific emails from the Taylors, who are the north, that in fact, having a setback reduction enhances their view because it moves the house 10 feet toward Hemlock and allows them an extra 10 feet of view toward the southwest. That's why they support the application. And I don't know if you got my notes and diagrams, but what I did is to illustrate what is being said about the view issue is that this is a view from Hemlock.
That wasn't in our record.
I'm sorry.
I don't believe that's in our record.
I think we voted to disregard that.
Yeah. It wasn't part of the record we're reviewing.
They added this criteria. So we were unable to say, hey, wait a minute, you're going beyond this. But let me explain verbally then what they're doing. And that is they're taking the house as an obstruction to the view. And anytime you build a house next to the road, there's going to be an obstruction in view. And the code indicates that a setback reduction impairs the view to a significant extent if you move it up the hill and you have somebody that's going to view that obstruction. But since you don't want to see the picture, you'll have to imagine that, that the ocean, you're looking down at the ocean. You're not looking up at the ocean. And so the top of the house is going to be up at the sky. So when you move the house 10 feet forward up the hill, it's only going to make a difference in the sky, not in the view of the ocean.
Okay, please remember to keep it just to
I'm sorry?
keep things that are just on the record. So try to,
This information wasn't on the record.
right.
Whether it's
Information.
verbal or a picture, doesn't
Right.
matter.
Okay, the view issue is on the record, and that's why I'm discussing the view.
Okay, but don't refer to anything that wasn't presented.
Okay, that's why I'm trying to make it clear verbally, what's happening.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to ask the attorney. Is she there?
Harry, do you want to?
So,
If we-
so the issue is that the planning commission made a decision based on a lack of evidence, a lack of facts to support a finding that the view impacts were not, wouldn't occur. And what it sounds to me like Mr. Burton is offering is he's offering those facts. He's offered them in a photograph, and the council said that they wouldn't consider the photograph. And now he's asking you to imagine looking down at the ocean. Those are all new facts. Facts are statements that are purported to be evidence that show the standard is met. And what the council has decided is they're not going to consider new facts. So the statement from Mr. Burton that Mr. Taylor said that the shortened setback enhances his view, moves his house 10 foot more to the west. Those are facts. That's again another piece of evidence that is not in the record. If Mr. Burton believes it's in the record, he can point to where he believes these statements were made to the planning commission. I have the record here in front of me, and I can turn to it quickly and we can identify those things. But any fact that is put forward that is not already in the planning commission's record cannot be considered.
Okay, thank
And
you.
there is some reference to this in the Carney letter from Ty Wyman regarding that. So that part is in the record.
What are you talking about?
Planning Commission.
Attachment A.
Attachment A and what page?
When was that written?
April 16. It was, I believe it was submitted with the application,
Okay, and what page?
with the appeal. Yes.
So is that allowed?
The appeal is on the record.
Okay, so what we have, I believe he's referring to the letter that was attached to the notice of appeal by Mr. Wyman. It's attachment A. And I guess my question for Mr. Burton would be where exactly there is a discussion of Mr. Taylor saying that the change in setback improves his view, and where it says that about imagining looking down at the ocean and shortening the sky. Where I don't see that in Mr. Wyman's letter, but I might be missing it.
Okay, well, it was stated by Mr. Taylor, and it was also explained diagrammatically. We submitted a diagram to the planning commission that showed that moving the house 10 feet toward Hemlock expanded the view to the southwest for the Taylor lot.
You submitted that letter prior to the appeal. I mean, this was during the planning commission hearing?
But Mr. Taylor has submitted two times.
One time before the planning commission heard it, one time after the planning commission made their decision.
Yes,
One after the planning commission made their decision, we cannot consider. That diagram you were holding up was never in this record that I can find. But if I'm wrong, please tell us where.
What we can consider is on page 4 of the letter that I mentioned. responding to commission's findings about impacts on views. It's at the top of page 4 of that letter, attachment A.
But this is written after the planning commission meeting, so
But is that not part of the record that was submitted with the,
No, it's the record
the record,
planning commission heard. Everything that they heard is what the record is.
so after the planning commission, anything that was submitted after the planning commission meeting is not part of the record, so we cannot consider it.
Yeah,
Letter.
what I see on page 4 with regards to the comment in the attorney's letter as part of the application is about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph, last sentence that says, indeed, the owner of the property immediately to the north, Jeff Taylor, testified in support of the application. Doesn't talk about views, doesn't talk about anything to that extent. It strictly says that they testified in support of the application.
I just want to be clear if this is part of the record or not. I mean, it was in the packet.
So
no.
I'm gonna clarify, the letter from Ty Wyman from Dunn Carney that was attached to the notice of appeal is part of the record.
Thank
It
you.
is part of the materials that would go on to Luba if this case gets appealed. It is part of the record. It should not include any new facts. I was under the impression that it included only arguments, how the council should interpret the criteria differently from the way the planning commission did. And that's fair game. Those arguments are fair game. What is not fair game are statements of facts regarding evidence. What the difference in the view is a fact, not an argument about how the criteria should be interpreted.
I got it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's,
Okay, it was raised at the planning commission that persons that are driving down Hemlock, this is a surprise. Because nowhere in the code does it say that if you're driving down the street, that you have a right to a better view because you're going to deny somebody a setback reduction. The code specifically states neighboring properties. So it's a perversion to say that a neighboring property is now Hemlock Street. And the code indicates that it's not just the obstruction. You can't deny an application because somebody's building a house and it's going to obstruct their view. We've been through that. But if they build in a house and it goes up the hill and increases the obstruction at the top of the house to the ocean, then you can deny the obstruction legitimately. But there's nothing here that you can deny the setback reduction legitimately, because people driving on or walking on Hemlock don't have a right to deny a setback reduction based upon their view. The neighboring properties do, and we agree with that. Yeah, it seems to me that a lot of this could have been clarified rather than resisting to take in the clarifying information that this should have been a de novo review. And that's what we requested. So that's the view issue. Okay, and then next is the planning commission brought up the objection that we weren't protecting trees on the property. But nowhere in the code is that a requirement. However, our plan was to protect the trees by making the utility underground. And obviously I can't show you a picture of that, but imagine on the corner of my property that we have a number of trees and the tops are all cut off. The branches are all damaged because the utility come in and they chop off the branches. And they're, of course, they're required to do that. So what I was proposing is that we underground the utilities so that the trees are protected on the property. That's something that we would agree to do if we have the setback reduction. But of course, without the setback reduction, it makes no sense to do that and the trees will still suffer.
And did you present that to the planning commission? The underground utilities?
No, the problem is that they brought that up as a non-code issue. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
So that information about underground utilities, if you're granted the setback reduction, was not before the planning commission. They didn't hear that.
You mean the planning commission?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm letting you know for your benefit.
except we told you that you have to confine your remarks to the record and you're not doing that.
Well, there is a line between presenting some clarifying information, which it seems that now you're telling me that any
And-
information I use to clarify my point becomes new evidence and can't be admitted.
Some of it is new evidence because you're adding information that we did not have because we are confined to the record here.
Okay, we don't want to hear about the trees. I'm good with that because it's not in the code. It's not a requirement for a setback reduction. It's just a benefit. Okay, and then the issue is the definition of unusual configuration for the property. And we pointed out to the planning commission that number one, it's a very steep slope. It's greater than 30 degrees, almost like building on the side of a cliff. And it's also unusual because the city has prohibited development with access into the lot from Hemlock and have prohibited parking in the setback space off of Hemlock. So for the frontage of the lot, we're required not to allow parking, not to have any driveway access into the property. So without the setback reduction, it's going to make it impossible to get into the property. And this was explained to the planning commission. So clearly, unusual configuration by topography and the city's restrictions make that unusual property in terms of configuration. Configuration has nothing to do with geology. And if we need to go back and read the code, the requirements say nothing about providing a geologic survey in order to obtain a setback reduction. However, the planning commission also erroneously stated in their conclusions that we had not conducted a geologic survey, when in fact, last year we had a detailed geologic survey done. We didn't present it because it's not required in the code. But since we can't present any new evidence, I can't tell you that we had a geologic survey and that the geotechs submitted a letter to further support our application that it made no difference what in a geologic sense, whether or not we had a setback reduction or not.
Yes.
Plan commission should redact the last statement and not take that into consideration. That was part of the letter that was submitted on June 3rd.
Okay, thank you.
Then the issue of utility width. We were given maybe there might be an issue there. When there was no indication whatsoever that the water main that was in the right of way would create a problem with a setback reduction. So I got a letter, of course, you're not going to hear it, but I got a letter from the person who actually placed that water main, and he testifies.
No,
Don't, if we're not going to hear it, don't read it
please don't.
or tell us about it.
You're going to tell me up front that what I can't say rather than just strike it from the record?
Yes, because that seems like an end run around the requirement. You know that you're not supposed to do it, obviously, and yet you still want to do it and then just have it stricken from the record. And I guess to influence us in some way, and it's really not appreciated. It'd be so much easier if you just stuck to the record.
Well, that's, I understand your point, but of course, that's the reason that to make this kind of a hearing fair and just, that you should be listening to the explanations that I'm speaking about, that the Planning Commission gave us no opportunity to talk about. And I should also add that, and I think it can be confirmed, that our application was supported by the city staff. The staff report to the Planning Commission identified confirmation with all of the points. So when we go to the Planning Commission with an application, I mean, if you're building a house and you rely on the city's conclusions, I trust that you would rely on the city planners who write a report that's honest, fair, and objective.
I believe that they told you your application was complete, but I don't think they made conclusions about each one of those issues.
No, that's incorrect.
Well,
Because the staff report specifies that the criteria were met.
if that was the case, why would there even be a planning commission hearing? If all that had to happen was that the city staff says, yes, 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 why would there even be a need to go to a planning commission?
Because the Planning Commission misapplied, misinterpreted, in this case, 3 of the criteria.
Oh,
Now, to put it in perspective too, as some of you may know, we've been here before. We attempted to get a setback reduction about a year ago, and it was denied, despite the city staff report specifically saying, we recommend that this application be approved. And similarly, it's happened this time as well. The city staff says that everything's been met, but yet the Planning Commission adds in issues that are extraneous to the written code. So basically, in conclusion, then, I believe the city council should overturn the Planning Commission denial and approve the application. The application meets all of the pertinent Cannon Beach Municipal Code requirements. The report submitted by city staff to the Planning Commission acknowledged that the criteria have been met. And then upon approval of the setback reduction, we will then seek approval of a building permit. And the council should find that our application is consistent with that. And I should point out, in a very similar previous case, where the setback reduction was challenged, that case went to LUBA. LUBA comes back to say the setback approval merely gives the applicant the right to seek approval of a development permit and building permit for a dwelling that is located 3 feet, in that case, it's 5 feet in our case, from the lot line instead of the 15 feet from the front line, as would otherwise be required by the city code without the setback reduction. The setback reduction decision does not purport to waive or obviate the requirement to comply with any and all city code development standards that apply to the owner's property. And that's the position we're in. All of the criteria are, we've met all of the criteria, and the issues of geology and, you know, the geology survey and all the other concerns are going to be met in the building permit process. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you. Are there presentations by proponents? Anybody on? Okay. Are there presentations by opponents? Is there a staff response?
No, there's.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to make any additional statements?
Can I make a couple comments? I'm sorry.
Of course you
I just want to point out a couple of things in response to what Mr. Burton has said, because I think it's important for the council to understand the record. The minutes from the planning commission hearing are in the record, and I'm assuming you all have seen them. And it does indicate that Mr. Burton was given an opportunity to rebut at that hearing. And it doesn't say as much, but I believe that the script does provide for anyone who wants additional time to request a continuance. And I don't see that Mr. Burton requested a continuance to submit additional evidence. So I'm struggling with the proposition that he didn't have an opportunity to submit additional evidence. The application at attachment D, exhibit A1, page 9, there's so many numbers on these, it's hard for me to direct you, but the application where the criterion D requires that one or more of the following have to be achieved by reductions of setback, and that's a lot of what Mr. Burton talked about. The impact of property views and unusual configuration. You'll see that in the application, these standards are just circled. There's no explanation and there's no evaluation of what properties views means in his view, or in what way he believes that the property has an unusual configuration. So I just want to point out that I believe that the Planning Commission did provide Mr. Burton an opportunity. Certainly Mr. Burton has the opportunity to, withdraw his application and start again, potentially, if that's what he decides to do. He's done it before. But to say that he is somehow prejudiced by the Planning Commission's review when he did have a full and fair opportunity to present evidence is not compelling in my view. The second thing I want to point out is the way the criteria work. In order to have a setback reduction under subsection 4, there's a number of letters, and you have to show that at least one of those is satisfied. The two that he's claiming are satisfied are views and unusual configuration. So that ought to be the focus of the council's deliberation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about this way I believe the planning commission interpreted the criteria, or the way I sort of look at them. Steve can help me if that would be helpful before the applicant has an opportunity to rebut.
I have a question on that.
Yeah,
The code says, I believe that, if the view is then impacted from, surrounding properties,
Neighboring.
is that
nearby.
going from nearby properties? I'm reading off the top of my head. I'm glad you've got it in front of you. Does that include Hemlock Street?
That is for the council to interpret. Right of way is part of property, it is dedicated to the city, but it is, it is dedicated as an easement essentially over private property, and the private property rights go to the center of the road. So, that it's up to the council to decide what nearby properties means given the context of encouraging or discouraging setback reductions.
Excuse me, just for a point of clarification, I'm looking at it B right now and it says neighboring property. So I don't know if yours says nearby, that does
Okay,
kind of.
I am looking, okay, so we're all looking at 17.64, right?
Right, for.
Number two, significant
okay.
views of the ocean, mountains, or similar features from nearby properties will not be obstructed any more than would occur if the proposed structure were located as required in the zoning district. So that is a question of whether or not the setback reduction reduces view impacts to a greater degree than if there was no setback reduction. And I think what the planning commission said is there's no evidence of the way in which that additional setback reduction impacts that northwestern view from Hemlock Street at Haystack Rock. That's the criteria that the planning commission found was not satisfied. 4B says the protection of neighboring properties' view of ocean, mountains, and similar features. And number 4 here is you have to do one of those things in order to get your setback reduction. And I think what Mr. Burton is arguing is that this does protect Mr. Taylor's view. And so he's doing that thing. And that's a different criterion than 2.
Okay, so you have to have one of that the above purposes are all maintained, plus one or more of the following are achieved by the setback reduction.
Correct. You have to not do 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8, but you must do one of the letter items in 4.
Right.
And in the application, Mr. Burton said he was doing B and E.
Okay. Got it. Can I just ask you, as far as E goes, construction on a lot with unusual configuration, it seems to me that what the planning commission was saying, they talked about wanting a geological report, is they wanted something that showed that to build the house within the required setback would not work for geological reasons. And that was what they were talking about when they wanted a geological report. They were not talking about, the one that accompanies the building permit, but they were saying basically there is not enough evidence to show that this lot has an unusual configuration, just because there's nothing to say that if you build within the envelope that's permitted without a setback, there is going to be a problem. And that's what I think they meant. That was my interpretation of what they meant when they said there was no geological report, which is reasonable. If you're saying that your property has an unusual configuration solely because, well, mostly because it has this steep slope on it. Many houses are built on incredibly steep slopes in Cannon Beach all the time. So they would need to show that on their lot, there was something that prohibited them from building on the sloped portion to make it an unusual configuration. That's how I interpreted it. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think that the way I sort of think about it is that Mr. Burton said, he said the lot is unusual because it is a very steep slope, just like you said. It has a very steep slope. Well, you know, in what way does that steep slope contribute to the unusual configuration
Right,
that leads to you needing this setback reduction?
exactly. And then if they had a geological report that said, well, no, you can't build in this portion of the property because it would cause all kinds of problems and it would affect other, you know, then you have evidence that you can't. But that's not what was provided. And that's why they asked for that. It wasn't that they were asking for something that they're not permitted to look at in this process. It was because they wanted proof that it was an unusual configuration. Because just saying it's a steep slope alone is not enough.
I
That-
think that's a reasonable explanation.
And does the unique approach, the driveway to this house, make it an unusual configuration? Essentially a kind of a panhandle with the driveway kind of coming into the west side of the property?
Well, that would occur
You're gonna have a chance when we're
in the
done.
drawings, Gary.
I'm asking Carrie.
I think that could make for an unusual configuration, but I think it's not so much that it's a panhandle. I think it has to do more with the elevation.
Mhm.
And again, my understanding from reading the minutes is it has to do with the elevation of the driveway. And I would think that a geological, and my read of the planning commission's review is that that was critical for them to find that the lot was an unusual configuration.
And wasn't there two drawings that were provided with the setback and without, and they both had the panhandle? It just that the panhandle was just different in each one, but it still required that panhandle configuration and an easement over the neighbor's property. And that would happen either way. It's just that one might be steeper, require a steeper approach than the other. That's what I got from reading all this. And again, that leads back to where's the geological information that substantiates that that makes it unusual.
I don't have anything else if the council doesn't have any other questions for me.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Carrie. So now you will have a chance.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I don't have a question, Carrie, but I do have a question,
Okay.
Steve. In the
I have more to say too.
staff report, when you get to the applicable criteria, and it's specifically section K, Steve.
Okay.
And then there's a staff note directly below it.
Yep.
Well, specifically, I'd like to reference 17.90.190.
What page you on?
Not sure at this point, but I do have a copy of 17.9. My question is,
Helpful.
Yeah, what page really would.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at two different things and I don't have it.
Attachment you're on?
It was at the beginning of the staff report. Page 7.
It's 7 of the packet.
Yes. And specifically, it says a site plan except for interior renovations of existing structures and exterior renovations such as siding replacement where there will be no ground disturbances. But it says a site plan meeting the requirements of section 17.90.190 has been submitted and approved. My question to you, Steve, is according to 17.
.190.
Yes. There's quite a bit of things that could be included, and I don't see where those have been included.
Yeah, as far as, so a lot of some of the criteria, the first things we talk about is the RL residential lower density district. So that's where this criteria is falling just in general in terms of information about the different lot width setbacks, floor area, different things like that. Exterior such a sign, no new construction unless a site plan. So a lot of times with there's the actual building permit itself and development proposals that require a lot more specific data. The setback reduction, it's still in that particular requirement, but the setback reduction is a little bit less than what's typically required of a site plan for a major development or for the construction of the new home. So that certainly could be a requirement that the council could consider. But with the reductions, there's usually a little bit of less specific information compared to a full-on drawing for a specific construction of a new home. At the time of building permit, at the time of design review of a larger commercial project. So the setback reduction, yes, that's in there, but oftentimes when we're reviewing the setback reduction, it has a little bit less in terms of the specifics in terms of what is required, but an applicant should put this information in because it gives us a lot better information to make an informed decision in.
Okay, so specifically in 17.90.190, it's section F.
Yes.
Existing trees 6-inch DBH or larger on adjoining property that in the judgment of the applicant's certified arborist by construction activity on the subject property. Or any of those trees to the east where he's suggesting into, are those on adjoining property or are those on the subject property?
I might have to refer to Mr. Burton on some of that. I think they're in some of the survey information. There's a little bit in terms of that talk about the tree permits or the trees on the lot, but there hasn't been like the formal tree permit submittal site plan that typically comes at the time of development. So I don't have a good answer to your question. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
A lot of that specific information comes at the time of development when the tree permit has to be submitted and we review it at that time.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
And the trees that you're referring to are the ones that are under the utility lines at the edge of the road?
Let me get to them here in just a second. I know they're on them. So on page 29. They appear to be inside the property.
Lisa?
Okay, and another issue that are you done with that?
Yes,
one?
thank you.
Okay. Another one that really concerns me is number 5, adjacent rights of way have sufficient width for utility placement or other public purposes. It seems like the planning commission addressed that issue. And they said they found that there's this 6-inch pipe, okay? But they found that a placement of a residential structure within 5 feet of the eastern property line may not provide sufficient space for the Public Works Department to excavate in order to access utility infrastructure when necessary to do so. And I think that to me is kind of a large issue. And then I'm wondering on page 4 of attachment D, the bottom third of that page, there's a staff comment that says this issue is similar to the one encountered when the Planning Commission reviewed setback reduction 2301 at 1956 South Hemlock Street, property immediately to the north of the subject property. Proximity to water infrastructure, particularly planned seismic valves, was an item of concern for Public Works Department. This is the lot directly to the north. The outcome of that application was the approval of a reduction for an upper level porch only in order to provide at-grade access to South Hemlock, with the remainder of the house conforming to the 15-foot setback requirement. So I remember that issue coming up. I don't remember the outcome of it, but it seems that what this is saying is they were allowed to have a setback reduction, but only for a porch that would not interfere with access down on the ground for infrastructure. And that is a criteria. That's a criteria that is required and that was addressed by the Planning Commission specifically. So I don't see exactly how to get around that. I mean, that seems like critical to me, that the Public Works should have access to, you know, to bring in equipment if they had, or excavation equipment or whatever they would need to do to access that, those lines or whatever they needed.
It would be
No.
nice to have that information because the planning commission does say that placement of the structure within 5 feet of the eastern property line may not provide sufficient space. Well, does it or not?
Well,
So Karen,
Without the geological reports to help us to make that decision, there's not evidence to say one way or the other, whether that's truly the case or not.
but that property that's immediately to the north, which is 1956 South Hemlock,
Yeah.
that's a next door neighbor,
It was a.
not allowed to have a setback reduction that was at grade level because of that issue. So how could it be different at the house next door?
okay, so we have Karen, our Public Works Director. On the phone. Good evening, Karen.
Yep, can you hear me now? First, I want to say thank you for bringing this up. I've been staying quiet, hoping someone would point this out. This is the exact reason. This is not the first house that this has come up with to on this area of Hemlock. And it won't be the last, I'm sure. But I'm going to clarify the issue here. Because of this location where these multiple homes have been talked about in setback reductions, just like this family's asking, this particular location is a pressurized water zone that receives water from both zones, Main and Talavana. So that's a huge amount of water that goes through that area. So if we were to have a line failure, you're talking 2.6 million gallons at a time that would be coming out of that infrastructure. I need space to address that and repair that. And it's critical that we consider that when we're looking at things like this on this area of Hemlock. This is a very different area than just Hemlock that runs downtown or any other aspect of Hemlock. This area of the S curves is a a very critical area of our infrastructure. And it does include the seismic valves that we're in the middle of putting in as well.
I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to ask if this testimony was presented before the planning commission.
It was not.
Was
I was
not,
not there during the meeting, but that was given to Steve and Robert as part of our concern in Public Works. Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I saw in the record was at some document, Public Works had expressed concern.
Yes.
It's on the record that Public Works expressed concern.
Right.
Just really wasn't clear. So I don't know
And-
what that may carry.
Room to be able to work on the infrastructure.
So
second,
if it was mentioned on the record, Carrie, I think you're muted, but if it's mentioned on the record, but not the detail of it, is what Karen's saying something that we can't listen to?
I think Karen is expressing some concerns, and I think the record reflects that the Public Works Department has some concerns. I think that the importance of the line and how much water it carries and what the impact would be of a rupture are all new facts that the council should not consider.
okay.
But that there are concerns.
Yes, and that the Planning Commission did find that placement of a residential structure within 5 feet of the eastern property line may not provide sufficient space for the Public Works Department to excavate in order to access utility infrastructure when necessary to do so. So that was a finding by the Planning Commission. They can't say definitely would, nobody could, but they can say may cause that problem. So that to me goes straight to number 5.
Can
No.
we consider that though, if the only criteria that the applicant was noting was the configuration of the lot and the view?
Yes.
So can we also?
This was a finding, this was in the findings of the Planning Commission. This is why they denied that.
I know, but I'm just thinking that the two that the applicant,
Right, and they found more
right,
as well.
and I'm just thinking that if that's the only two, then.
No, I just think that that's only 2. If
Can we consider those others that were not part of they were part of the the list was part of the application, but the two that the applicant was asking for consideration was the configuration and the view. The Planning Commission added the Public Works aspect of it. Can we consider?
Yeah, those were part of the findings of fact that was part in there. The other thing I'd like to mention is just in the staff report that we were talking about, it just said the city's Public Works Department has expressed concern about their ability to access infrastructure being impacted by the proposed development, proximity to the water infrastructure, particularly planned seismic valves, was an item of concern for the Public Works Department.
Thank you for finding that.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, anything else?
Mm-mm.
Staff?
I have a question.
Okay.
What was the planning staff's original recommendation for this?
There was no recommendation.
No recommendation at all? Okay.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Mr. Burton?
This pipe was the last part of the discussion. I want to talk about the pipe. You probably don't have a diagram that shows the location of that water main. The water main runs very close to the Taylor lot. On my lot, it's going diagonal.
Did you present that at the Planning Commission? You had a chance to rebut at the Planning Commission and to talk about these things. You didn't. You had a chance for a continuance to present this information. You didn't ask for continuance. So I'm asking you, you're presenting information now about the way the water main goes by your property. And that's not something we can consider.
Well, it's difficult to rebut a maybe, I don't know, but it might be. they put in there May, and that wasn't an objection at the time of the hearing that we could respond to.
Yes, you could
We
You could-
do know,
say, no, it doesn't, and here's why, but you didn't do it.
yeah, I can tell you that,
You
but
can't tell us that now.
that's because you're closing the hearing to
We've confined it to the record.
explanation.
We've confined the hearing to the record.
That was part of the hearing. And I'm offering clarification.
That's what you can't do right now, is offer new facts. You can't offer new facts. That's what you're doing.
Okay, it was stated, it was shown at the planning commission meeting that it was diagonal. Type is diagonal. It cannot be argued that it applies the same as the Taylors, because for most of the length of that pipe is much farther than 5 feet away.
So you said this at the planning commission meeting and provided a drawing,
Absolutely.
planning commission meeting. Where is that in the record?
We have the document. And we discussed the water main there.
Okay, I don't know. I don't have the minutes, so I don't see that in the minutes anywhere.
I can't speak to the amount of discussion, but there was an attachment in the staff report that shows kind of how it runs in that area. That was probably the most extent that there was just the general conversation about the general location, not a lot of discussion, but that water line was shown in a diagram in the staff report.
Okay, and there's no
48 of the packet.
okay, 40, and there's no discussion about access by Public Works.
Right, just the general comments in the staff report.
Okay. So that it may make a problem for Public Works.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay,
And there you do see on that page 48. Very much adjacent to the property. That's like the boundary.
I'm not finding it. Which attachment?
Attachment D.
D? Page 48. That's exactly what I'm on and I don't see it. Attachment D.
Map at the top of the
I can pass this.
attachment D, page 5.
Page 5. Okay. Attachment D, page 5. So if you argued before the planning commission at the hearing that you thought there'd be no impact,
No, I had our architect make the arguments. I don't remember his specific words, but we were presented with the diagram that shows a diagonal pipe, and it was blue. And for the run of it, it was clearly much further than 5 feet, even out into the right of way.
yeah, I can't tell from this diagram how far away it is at all.
Well, I don't think you have the right diagram.
This is the only one that's in the packet.
Yeah, and it looks like it's the property.
The only one that's in the packet before the planning commission. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, you should have a diagram that was prepared by city staff that shows
That's it.
it shows a blue pipe.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't tell how far away it is. It doesn't tell whether or not it would impact ability to service that pipe if there was a problem. It doesn't tell us anything. It just shows it's a little farther away on your property than on the property to the north, but not, I can't tell if that's 1 foot, 2 feet. There's nothing there. So,
Okay, the planning commission indicated it was a maybe. They weren't sure, they didn't know if it was going to be a factor, so I'm trying to provide some clarification, but nobody wants to hear any of the clarification.
well, the place to provide the clarification would have been to ask for a either done it in your rebuttal before the planning commission or ask for continuance so that you can get all this information gathered up and presented to the planning commission at a future hearing, a month later or whenever it would be. But that didn't happen. So now we're stuck with this record. We have a record and we're confined to the record, and you are, you know, you're trying to present all this new information that we cannot consider. And I think you understand that. I don't know why this is such a battle.
You know, basically, I'm trying to clarify what's in the record.
But you,
Clarification sometimes requires bringing in some new knowledge.
new facts, and you were told specifically by our city attorney that you cannot present new facts at this hearing. So I don't know what else to say, frankly. You know,
I understand, that it's, within this body's right, to, either have a de novo hearing or, remand it back to the planning commission so that we can fill in those spots.
well, we voted and unanimously voted to have a hearing on the record, which we usually do. And so, when it comes to planning commission issues, this is an unusual. And this is what we usually do, is have a hearing on the record, and that's what we did with your case. So now we are confined to this record. Sorry, that's just,
You're saying, this case cannot be remanded back to the.
that I don't know. I mean, so can that happen at this point? Or is it too late?
It's too late.
Too late?
If that's a question for me, the 120-day clock expires right now on June 28th. So there isn't time to send it back to the planning commission before, and have the planning commission make a decision and then have an appeal right again to the city council, before June 28th. The only way that remand like that back to the planning commission would work is if the applicant extended the 120-day clock to accommodate that to happen. That's the legal answer. That's not whether or not it's a good policy idea. That's up for the council to decide.
Okay, but you are saying that you can remand if we extend the deadline.
You would have to agree to extending the 120-day period.
And my question would be, why didn't you do that with the planning commission so you could answer all these questions?
Well, because we were blindsided. And to make it simple, once again, we relied on the city staff report, the city staff analysis. I mean, you must pay them well, and they do a great job. I'm sure they must do a site visit. They review all of the codes and applicability, and then they write a very nice staff report. And the staff report now on 2 occasions said we met all of the criteria.
Yeah.
And in the first instance, even recommended that the application be accepted. The second time around, there are new roadblocks thrown up that we were not prepared for.
So then why didn't you ask for continuance at that time so you could answer those roadblocks?
It wasn't offered to us, and we don't know all the rules of the game.
You weren't offered.
That's why I'm saying if there's
Sorry.
some deficiency, we're more than happy to fill it in, but we'd like to have the ability to do that. We think that this should have been a de novo hearing because there is, as you've indicated, some pertinent information that clarifies the findings.
Yes, the planning commission makes land use decisions ordinarily. If you had asked for a continuance to fill in all this information, you could have been before the planning commission. This could have been completely avoided if you had waived the 120-day rule back then and said, yes, we want to continue this because we want to provide the information that you request. And you didn't do that. I don't know. I don't understand why, but you didn't. And so now here we are stuck. We are on the record. That's that.
Madam Mayor, can we go on? Obviously this didn't happen.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask you, can you had any other statements you would like to make.
I don't know that it's going to be helpful at this point, but there was a question about the driveway issue. Since we're blocked from entering on Hemlock, we can't park on Hemlock. We're required to have at least 2 parking spots. That mandates that we enter the lot from Center Street through a flag-shaped lot. And we underwent tremendous legal issues to establish that driveway. But the driveway is now owned by us. And our plan had been to use that driveway in order to comply with the city's mandate. But if we have to build the house down the hill, that makes the driveway too steep to enter the garage at the bottom of the house. And that's why we're requesting the setback reduction, so that we can move the house 10 feet toward Hemlock and lengthen the driveway and make the slope of the driveway less steep. And if we can't enter the lot from Center Street, and we can't enter it from Hemlock, we're going to be in a very difficult position.
I think that's why the planning commission wanted the geological reports to show that, that was how steep that the driveway would actually be, what the slope would be, everything. I mean, you're telling us.
We spent a great deal of time defining the slopes. We presented a diagram with the slopes, which are anywhere from 30 to 60%. It's almost like trying to build a house on a cliff. And the planning commission was well aware of that limitation, and the fact that it would be very difficult for us to build a house without a setback reduction and then enter from Center Street.
Okay, anything else?
Okay, just finally, the setback reduction doesn't guarantee the ability to build a house. It's only a right to apply for a building permit.
Okay.
That's all we're looking at doing.
Okay,
Everything else, we agree with the city code, and we certainly follow all of the city code requirements.
okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and move to consideration. Anybody?
Well, my biggest concern is the access issue for utilities along Hemlock. I think that it hasn't been established that there would be enough access to satisfy what Public Works would need. And so that is my biggest concern. And I think that's number 5. I don't believe, it's possible that again, if this was to go back before the planning commission, there was more evidence presented, maybe they could show that it would not be a problem. I don't know. So if we can't take into account what Karen said tonight. And so we don't know what the answer to that is, but it's enough of a concern to me that I feel very uncomfortable approving this application. The other thing that really bothers me, and I spent 8 years on the planning commission, and the unusual configuration issue, me, just the fact that it's a steep slope does not make it an unusual configuration requiring a setback. I would need more information on the record to make that determination. I don't have that information on the record. So, and I don't believe that the planning commission did either. And that's why they made the finding that they did. A unanimous denial of this application for those reasons. So talked about the view issue. That's to me, it's kind of a creative and really a unique interpretation of that. I don't know, at least I never encountered it before sitting on the planning commission. but I'm not saying I don't think it's a good idea. I'm just saying that it's a unique interpretation of that provision. I think it's, I think the strongest one is the utility access. I think the other one that's very strong is the unusual configuration. And the trees, the view is, I love to see that fleshed out some more. I'd like to actually know what Bill thought of that as a land use attorney. Anyway, so
I'll agree that the utility access is important. I would probably argue some of the others. I think maybe the view thing is creative, but that difference of where the house would sit without the setback and where it would sit if the setback reduction is granted is not, the standard setback is going to impact views. That's clear. So I don't see that as, and I might push back on the unusual configuration as well, because that driveway is where it has to be as their only access, and the challenges it creates with the slope. I think there's some legitimacy to that, but it's the access to utilities that is really the stopper for me.
Yeah, I basically agree with everything you said. I think there is a concern about the configuration of the lot. I think just, yes, there's a slope, but there's also the requirement to access it from Center Street and the percentage of slope to get into the garage and so forth and to into the house. The Hemlock utility line is the one that worries me more. But I also look at those houses to the north on Hemlock about a block away, and I wonder what the situation is there with, and those houses have been there for a long time.
grandfathered in.
And yeah, I'm sure. And they've got to be 5 feet.
Right.
I mean, they're
They were to
very
tear the
close.
house down and rebuild it and ask for a
Yeah,
setback reduction. I don't, we.
they probably wouldn't, no.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's some way of addressing the utility line situation. It may be worthwhile remanding this back to the planning commission just to get that resolved or to get that answered. Planning commission wanted a geological description too, and maybe this is an opportunity for the applicant to do that, to discuss the configuration of the lot.
I'd like to hear from our attorney, because she said she thought she didn't know if that was a good policy decision. So I'm curious to hear what she has to say. The idea of a remand.
I was only saying that whether or not this is a good policy is above my pay grade. Right? I can tell you that there's nothing in the code that prohibits the council from remanding this back to the planning commission to reconsider. But whether or not the council it thinks that's a good policy or not is up to the council.
Okay.
But the legal aspect of this is that Mr. Burton would have to extend the 120-day clock
Yeah.
by some significant number of months to allow the city to issue notice. The city would have to renotice and essentially start again.
See, oh, go ahead.
You want to go? I'm just wondering if he agreed to extend or start over the 100-day period, 120-day period now at this meeting. Is that sufficient for a remand?
Can I ask a question?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it could be.
I think that the answer to the question is yes. I would think that an additional 120 days would be sufficient if the applicant is willing to agree to that, and they would have to confirm that in writing by sending an email to the planning department tomorrow.
Okay,
Can we ask him the question now, or do you want to?
well, no, I want to say that I don't think it's a good policy because I think that the applicant had the opportunity at the planning commission level to extend the 120-day rule to bring in more information. In other words, this happened all the time in the planning commission. I would say 80% of these hearings, there would be a continuance requested by the applicant to extend the 120-day period to bring more information to the planning commission. And that this applicant chose not to do that. They chose to take all the time of the council to do an appeal, and then the end result is what would have happened if they had extended that 120 days. And
Was the applicant notified that he could request an extension?
I would bet money that they were. I mean, that's what always happened. They were, if someone wanted to present more evidence or said that they had more information, you'd say, well, were you willing to extend the 120? I can't imagine that commission would, or that the planning department would not make them apprised of that, the availability of that option.
Well, it's even
So-
easier than that, Lisa. You don't have to waive your 120-day right to have a continuance.
That's right.
Within your
Yeah.
right as an applicant to get that.
Exactly, right.
Well, we are.
I, however, feel different than Lisa, that if he was willing to waive the 120-day and have the clock start over, I'd be amenable to remanding it back to the.
I mean, otherwise, what?
He has
is
to
the
start again.
recourse? I think we would like to see this resolved and they actually have access to their property. We certainly don't want another Hemlock Street access to a property.
Right.
Here, we've got one on Center Street. It's a challenging thing to do. So, what can we do that's going to?
He would have to start again. You just have to submit a new application with all the information that he now knows.
If we remanded it to
Hmm?
that's basically what he would end up doing.
Right, but I'm talking about a process. I'm talking about policy. Not talking about, it's the same end result. The policy of having him appeal it to the council when he had ample opportunity to do this before at the planning commission level. To me, that's a misuse of the process. And all of our time and all of our, efforts on this when it could have been done in the proper format before, and it wasn't.
I think we all understood that recourse, the options. So I'm not sure what benefit of starting over. It sounds like we're punishing him.
It's
For
not
not
punishing,
understanding.
it's asking somebody to follow the right process. I don't find that to be a punishment. I find that asking someone to follow the rules.
And the policy of remanding is not wise because
Because he had the opportunity all along, and now that things aren't going in his direction, all of a sudden he wants to waive the 120-day rule and send it back. This is, the way to do it the right way is to ask for continuance at the planning commission level. We did that, I said, in about 80% of the applications. And I don't understand why that didn't happen then.
I'm not,
Can anyone answer that for me?
I can't.
still don't understand.
Well, I can't
Are
make
we
it.
setting some kind of horrible precedent by just getting it to the planning commission and extending the 120-day period?
I think it's a bad precedent. Yeah, I do.
Want to make a motion?
Well, first of all, we'd need to establish the applicant willing to
Yes.
waive the 120 days.
Right.
Sure he would.
Yes. Hey, Carrie, I have a question. If we are considering doing that, and you indicated that the applicant would have to provide documentation to us by tomorrow, what would happen if that didn't occur?
Well, I think that the applicant would make an affirmative statement right at this hearing that they will waive the 120-day clock for an additional 120 days, and that they will send you an email confirming that tomorrow.
So with the best idea here, do we have to open the record or anything for Mr. Burton to make that request? Should the council elect to offer that?
Yes.
Mr. Burton, is extending the 120-day rule something that would be satisfactory for you?
Well, if that's the best we can do, I'm okay with that. I'd like to have a hearing sooner. I'd be prepared for a hearing sooner because, you know, some clarification of a couple of the issues that I haven't been able to convince you my way. So if that's the best option, I'm good. But it doesn't mean that I understand that's the full length of the time period, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the hearing would be scheduled out 120 days.
No.
It would be scheduled in normal course of events, as though we were applying for a new hearing. In that instance, I think it would be satisfactory. And I would be prepared, and I appreciate that opportunity.
Well, I would like to move to remand the Burton setback reduction planning commission based on the applicant extending the 120-day period
To an additional
to an additional
20 days.
Contingent upon him providing the necessary.
Yes, I mean, based on him agreeing to extend the 120-day period, an additional 120-day words.
Specifically with
In writing.
notice by tomorrow.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's the policy we want to see happen, so that could be part of my motion as well. Requiring the applicant to submit in writing tomorrow to extend an additional 120 days.
Just a second, please.
I'll second that.
Jen, did you get the motion?
Do you want to hear it before you second it?
Yeah.
I thought you already made the motion.
Quick question, is the motion, are we talking, okay, so I've got that, remand to the planning commission based on the applicant extending to an additional 120 days with written notice.
By end of day tomorrow?
Do we
To the
want
planning, to the planning,
Right,
to the planning department.
notice to the planning department?
The written notice.
To the planning department by end of day tomorrow?
Do we want to include the additional information thing that Brandon just mentioned or no?
I would like to see that.
I think that's what I just included. What do you have so far?
Okay. Notice to the planning department. Finding additional. Okay, Burton, remand the Burton setback reduction to the planning commission based on the applicant extending an additional 120 days with written notice to the planning department by the end of the day tomorrow and providing additional information.
So you're reopening the record, is that correct?
That's correct, Carrie, that we would be having a new public hearing to allow for new testimony to be included.
Someone's testimony or a letter from her would also be part of that.
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm only curious about the motion and the last thing you said, Jen, about and the additional information.
Well, that was what Brandon had said about providing additional information, and you said that's what you had meant.
Oh, only the additional information of the applicant extending the 120-day period in writing
Okay.
by the end of, to the planning commission by the end of day tomorrow. Isn't that what you meant?
Yes.
Okay, hold on. Did you second it?
Yeah.
Want a second?
Well, I think at the minimum, we need additional information. Maybe this doesn't need to be part of the motion. At the minimum, okay, I'll second it. so we can discuss it.
Okay.
So I second it for discussion purposes. And I think the additional information that he needs to bring in at the minimum is the information about the utility line, location of the utility line. Of course, we need Karen's response to that. And the information that the planning commission requested regarding the geological survey of the lot.
Carrie, you can comment on this if you want to, but I think just remanding it back to the plan commission with 120 days and putting the responsibility on the applicant to provide the information that they think is necessary to meet the criteria to have the plan commission issue it is what we should do. I don't think we should tell them specifics. He's heard the information that we're concerned about. He knows the criteria. He chose not to submit those documents previously. If he chooses not to submit them again this time, that's on him, not us.
Okay, what he said.
Okay.
So the way it stands.
But I just want to make absolutely clear, this is a whole new hearing.
That's correct.
And the city and any city staff can provide letters or testimony as well as the applicant,
It basically is kind of starting from ground.
starting from the ground.
Yeah, so
Interior on the table.
the applicant, proponents, opponents, staff all have the opportunity, and it will be based on Mr. Burton's submittal in terms of the information that he chooses to submit like he's done previously. So really, it's up to him to have heard the concerns and address the concerns in such a way that he can potentially possibly get an approval of his information. If he elects not to provide that information, which has been done previously, that would be on the applicant to provide the information necessary to get an approval.
Right, and if Public Works wants to provide additional information, they're free to do so as well.
Yes.
And Carrie, did you want to weigh in on the additional information of the remand?
I think Mr. Sokolowski did a great job of summarizing what I would say.
Okay.
I think that we'll just need to we'll get Public Works response to whatever additional materials that Mr. Burton submits.
Can I do a quick clarification? Is it 120 days from today or 120 days from the end of the first 120 days?
It's 120 days from the date that, in addition to the days that are already there. So right now it expires on January or June 28th. Is that right, Steve?
Yes, that's correct.
So it would be 120 days from June 28th.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Problem with that?
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes.
Council President McFerrin.
Yes.
Yes.
Counselor Kerr,
No,
Mayor Knopf.
No. Okay. So you got some work to do, Mr. Burton.
Opportunity to talk a little bit more, time frames and stuff like that.
Okay,
No, get the letter in tomorrow and we'll start talking some more. Okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready to go on to ordinance 2405. Request for a text amendment to chapter 17, zoning and finding of facts and conclusions. Steve, and
Oh, no problem.
this can go.
I'm sorry, I don't have it. Is this the combination of the reorg?
Yes.
Okay. So basically at our May 7th meeting, the council had rendered a decision to approve the text amendments to chapter 17, which reorganizes the zoning ordinance and combines it with chapter 16 subdivision. Council directed staff to draft findings for the approval, and attached are the proposed findings for the council's consideration and adoption. And staff is recommending the findings be adopted and suggests the following motion. I move to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law for zoning ordinance 24-01, a text amendment to the municipal code, chapter 17.
Not any discussion? Make a motion?
Everybody?
I move to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law. Number 2401, a text amendment to municipal code, chapter 17, zoning.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, so,
This would just be a regular roll call.
okay. Roll call, please.
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Counselor Kerr.
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Council President McCarthy.
Yes,
Mayor Knopf.
Yes,
And now we'll get into the ordinance.
okay.
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2405.
Second.
Ordinance 2405, ZO 2401, City of Cannon Beach request for text amendment to municipal code, chapter 17, zoning. Discussion? Roll call?
Council President McCarthy.
yes,
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Counselor Kerr.
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, so ordinance 2405 has been adopted. No,
One more.
one more. I have to read it by title only. I'm sorry.
You already read it by title, so now I need the second motion to adopt the second reading and approve the second.
Okay,
reading.
okay.
I move to approve the second reading and adopt ordinance number 2405.
Second.
Ordinance 2405, ZO 2401, City of Cannon Beach request for a text amendment to municipal code, chapter 17, zoning. Roll call?
Counselor Kerr.
Discussion. Okay, roll call.
Counselor Kerr.
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy.
Yes.
Council President McCarthy.
yes,
Counselor Hayes.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. So ordinance 2405 has been adopted and will become effective 30 days from adoption. Did you do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so next we have ordinance 2406. City of Cannon Beach request for zoning ordinance text amendments to 1743 wetland overlay zone and findings of fact and conclusion.
All right, very similar process we're talking about here. This time, instead of the reorg, we're talking about the wetlands section of the zoning ordinance. Council made a decision to tentatively approve at May 7th meeting and requested that findings be drafted for council consideration and adoption, and staff recommends the findings be adopted and suggests the following motion. I move to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law for ZO 2302, a text amendment to chapter 17.43 of the wetlands overlay zone.
Well, I'm going to make a motion. I move to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law for ZO 2302, a text amendment to chapter 1743 wetlands overlay zone.
A second.
So ordinance 2406, ZO 2302.
Not there yet.
Oh, sorry.
So this was just for the findings.
Mhm.
So discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
This one's weird because
Okay.
it's the findings and the
Okay.
ordinance.
I'll just
Okay.
say that after seeing the recommendations of the housing task force, code revisions, I would hope we would consider something similar with this ordinance. There's some kind of give back to property owners who build housing as a public benefit.
Wetlands?
Yes, who? I mean, there's page 7 of attachment A discusses economic consequences. Table 1 properties affected by the current and proposed wetlands or ordinance district are predominantly zoned residential. Only 5 additional non-residential lots will be affected by the proposed buffer area expansion. The proposed amendments have potential negative impacts by 1, extending the wetland buffer area from 5 to 50 feet, thereby making 90 additional lots subject to the chapter. So there's 321 lots affected by this ordinance. And 162 of them are exactly 50% are R2 or R3 zones where medium and high density development is allowed.
So are you saying that you think we should have high density development on wetlands lots?
I think that this is an opportunity because of the buffer, a 50-foot buffer limits development in such a great area. I mean, the buffer area could be greater than the actual wetland area. We don't make no there's no differentiation between a minor wetland and acres of wetland. And it just feels like we have the opportunity to accomplish preservation of major wetland areas and make some gains in the type of housing that our comprehensive plan requires.
I think that what will happen when we do the housing ordinance and should make changes to that, that's where you'll see givebacks and things that will happen. But this is an ordinance to protect wetlands. This is not where you make housing policy in the wetlands ordinance. This is an ordinance designed solely to protect the wetlands. That discussion of givebacks and incentives will happen in the housing.
You're saying that will overrule what's in the wetlands ordinance?
It would, and it would overrule the tree ordinance too, if we choose to do it. I'm not saying that's going to happen because I think you either protect wetlands or you don't. And 50 feet is the minimum under best available science that is required to actually make any impact on the protection of a wetland. That has been shown over and over again in study after study. And really 50 feet is not even that big. A lot of jurisdictions have 75 feet. So I'm just saying that if there are going to be givebacks and those kinds of things, those will happen in the housing discussion. There's no place in a wetlands protection ordinance for that. We've already made it okay to build duplexes.
I think I disagree with that this is the place that it should be.
It's not going to happen because it's already gone through the state. The state has looked at it and said that it does comply with all of the things that we need to comply with. And, they've already approved it. And we went through a huge process with them. It went on and on and on where they looked at economic benefits. That was it was called an EC analysis. And one of the E's stands for economics and economic benefits, et cetera. So, yeah, I don't think that you can't have a wetlands protection ordinance and then go into the housing thing is a whole separate issue. And if we decide to make, some kind of exceptions for certain kinds of housing on wetlands, I don't know if that will happen or not.
But that's where the
But that's where it'll
discussion
happen.
will take place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself in this awkward position, having been an advocate for wetlands protection for 30 years.
Really.
But I also know that we have a housing issue and that the affected lots are in our, and I'm not asking for apartment buildings in wetlands.
The wetlands discussion that we had last time, we had all kinds of ideas for incentivizing and build, taking away all kinds of roadblocks to increased housing.
Exactly.
And
After-
it doesn't
after
have to
seeing-
happen. It doesn't have, and we didn't even discuss wetlands in that because it wasn't even, Marcy actually helped draft this wetlands ordinance. And she is a total housing advocate and has put this forward. So,
Well, after seeing the recommendations on housing, it seems like we could do something similar.
Gary, you said you didn't necessarily want apartments, for instance, in wetlands, which would be high density housing or medium to high density housing. What would you like to see? Do you have any suggestions as to how you could, as you say, give a little bit for in this for housing?
I wish I was more of an expert. But if there's a buffer area that's buildable, a possible give back for an ADU in a situation like that.
So you're talking about possibly ADUs.
Yeah, that sounds like we're gonna be,
Cottages.
we're going to be, ADUs may not be a term we use anymore,
Yeah.
but
I think we've.
separate dwelling
duplex. I don't think didn't we say, I think we had to
Yeah, I think we had, there is something in the ordinance
have a duplex.
allow that kind of give and take, because if I remember right, that ordinance is so long. The buffer, the whole buffer question, you can go into the buffer if there isn't enough upland to build the 1,000 square foot house. So you can
Right.
go into the
or
buffer,
1,400 square foot house, is that? the
1,400,
limit?
yeah, I guess it's
You
14.
don't know what it's gonna be.
It was a 1,000 square foot footprint.
Right.
That could be 2,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So you could,
1,000 or was it 1,400?
No,
14,000.
1,400 was the driveway and parking space, like the extra 400. But the structure itself was footprint of 1,000 that would allow it to be 2-story.
Obviously, if it was 2,000, then there's a 600-foot ADU and a 1,400-foot primary residence, and nobody's gonna do that.
Why
I
not?
guess that's,
why not?
I have a 1,300 square foot house. It fits me fine. I don't know why you wouldn't do it.
Or have a 1,200 and a
I lived
800.
in a 500 square foot house on the north side,
I've lived in small ones.
so.
So I don't see that as an issue at all. If you had something specific that I just don't see what you're getting at.
Again, I wish I had a specific recommendation. I just think we're pushing this and
We are.
limiting what we, some kind of public benefit that may be there.
Not limiting it though. We haven't even addressed that yet. That will be in the whatever housing ordinance we come up with. We're not going to have a public
I don't think
benefit.
it works that way, but
Well, it
I
does.
don't
I'm
think-
sitting on the housing committee and I know it works.
somewhere else in the code, it's gonna overrule what it says in the wetlands code.
Well, I think
I'm not a municipal code expert.
I think that's what the code audit is trying to prevent is one ordinance overruling another ordinance.
Yeah, we're trying to
We're
simplify.
going to be able to give doesn't mean we can't give a public benefit if we decide to do that. If we decide we want to do that in wetlands. I mean, I'm trusting Marcy to some extent because she is the one who, finalized this with the state. And she's also the person who's working really hard for housing in this. That seems to be her primary goal. So I'm trusting that she knows what she's doing. Anyway, my motion and the second is on the table, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from some people who are concerned about this, and I brought this up probably every time we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And again, it pains me too, because, I'm a conservationist.
Well, you say,
But I also see our other needs here. So I think there are cases where we've got larger properties of wetlands that a home and an ADU could be possible and actually incentivize ADUs rather than you have to live in 1,400 square feet or
well, Marks is proposing getting rid of ADUs actually as a terminology
Yeah.
instead of going
no,
to
a second
duplex.
unit, a separate dwelling.
Duplex, whether it shares a common wall or is two separate dwellings. And there's nothing in here that would prevent that.
Essentially, all I see this as, I mean, wetlands preservation, which I acknowledge is important. But a lot more,
What do you want that's not in here? I'm just not understanding.
I'm not gonna keep saying the same thing over and over again, Lisa.
I'm
but,
still not getting it.
No,
Something concrete
essentially what we're
here.
gonna have is more single-family homes that are, their best use is as a second home.
I don't,
They're gonna be $1 million homes and their best use is going to be as a second home.
that's-
So I think we can do better, but
that would be true on any lot, Gary, any lot in the city.
That is also so true. I just think by virtue of what you're asking for, Gary, sorry, but I can't support what is being left unsaid. And that is, in order to get what you're asking for, we're going to have to decrease the buffer or increase that footprint. And that's just not something I'm comfortable
okay.
going along with. And you bring up a good point about the number of lots, but it also speaks to the fact that if we really are serious about wetland protection, you know, that is what we're going to need to do. And if somebody's serious about providing housing as a rental or whatever, they're going to have to get creative in order to do it. Which, you know, I don't think this is going to necessarily incentivize that, but I do, as a person on the housing committee, am committed to trying and incentivize people to do just that. So I'm willing to take a look at it at that point.
I think, all of us realize that it's a really tough balancing act. And
Yep.
this is protecting our wetlands, but when we get to the housing part, we're gonna have those discussions, and those are gonna be tough discussions. Because that's a huge priority for all of us also. And, you know, and I can guarantee you that your concerns are gonna be addressed. And
You can guarantee that, huh?
I can guarantee it.
Okay, well, then I won't lose sleep over it.
Okay. Because we have to do something about housing. And I think we all
Yes.
know that.
Got a motion and a second.
Yeah,
Yeah,
You're in the discussion. You are ready?
I think we're ready for,
Okay, so just a reminder, this is for the findings of fact.
right.
right.
Counselor Ogilvy,
Yes,
Council President McCarthy,
Yes,
Counselor Hayes,
No,
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
So now I move to approve the first reading of ordinance 2406.
second,
Ordinance 2406, ZO 2302, City of Cannon Beach request for zoning ordinance text amendments to chapter 1743 wetland overlay zone. Any discussion? Okay, roll call please.
Counselor Hayes.
No.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Ogilvy,
yes,
Council President McCarthy,
yes,
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
Okay, so this is now done for the night because there was a no vote. It's not unanimous. So this will need to come back for a second reading at another meeting. And it can be as soon as next week's meeting
Okay,
or the eighteenth. It's up to you guys. The packet for this 11th is gonna go out tomorrow. I was just waiting for two more pieces and one came in late tonight. So we can add this to the 11th if you'd
I
like.
would like that.
And the 11th is a work session and a special meeting.
Yeah,
That I
Okay.
agree.
Yeah. the
yeah,
11th.
just do
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
11th, everybody okay
I've
with
been on
that?
for years.
So the second reading of this will go to the 11th.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
I just wanted to say a couple of things. There's been a lot of discussion from a lot of you in terms of moving forward and doing something with the code audit. Congratulations, you just did something. We have a lot more work to do, but it's the first step. So congratulations.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
And thanks for your help.
Yeah, and your staff's help. Oh, yeah.
This happened without your help.
Yeah.
Amount of work that we did the wetland and the committee.
The folk.
And the staff.
Yeah.
Really, it just-
Entry is in-house.
And what, Marcy's team, I have. to
Yes.
say, They
Yeah.
put in hours.
Yep.
So.
Okay, we're on our way.
Yes.
Okay. Next we have the monthly status report. Anybody have any questions on that?
Oh, I do have a question.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm just wondering, this is for Jason. And I think he answered it before, but I don't remember what the answer was. So when you have the list at the back of this, the walk-ins, incoming phones, dispatched calls, you have 2024 and 2023, and you have that for a lot of things.
Mhm.
Is that 2024 up to this date and all of 2023? So they're not comparable. One is just for 6 months.
No, it's for that month.
Oh, it's for the
That's what
month.
we were that month last year.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's what I wondered, okay. So we can really say, well, for this month, we're up for walk-ins,
Yeah.
but we're down for something else.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the monthly status report? Okay, I don't think I have anything for mayor communications. Anybody have any counselor communications?
Yes. We got a mail from Teresa Durst, correct?
Yeah, it came late today. I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, but it's asking for a date, July 11th. And is that a city council meeting date?
For what?
It's a countywide meeting that we've had in the past, but we haven't had any in a long time. And
I can't even.
It doesn't really say why.
Says, I've been asked to. set
it's
up-
a little nebulous on content. I'll agree with that, but nonetheless, they've asked if on July 11th, we'd be willing to meet.
And
So-
who is Miss Durst? I don't,
She works for the county.
County
what department?
manager's office.
Okay,
So do we have a meeting on July 11th?
No, July 11th is a Thursday. The only thing that is happening is at 5 o'clock, you have a Friends Up meeting. So I don't know,
Have a what?
Friends of Haystack Rock.
Oh,
that's at 6 o'clock, well, 5 o'clock, yeah. And then that's the committee at 5 and the whole meeting starts at 6.
yeah, I can't meet on that day either. And I have a show at the show.
I just wanted to bring it up because
Yeah,
I
thank you.
got the email. And
Yeah.
you're all welcome to respond how you'd like.
And then maybe they'll come up with another date.
They should just do like Jen does and just give us a bunch of dates and see what we
Yeah.
can come up with.
I think these are a little harder just because
It involves all
The
the
elected.
jurisdictions. Yeah.
There's actually really cool meeting polls that are made for like large groups of people and it's kind of neat. I haven't quite gotten that.
Yeah, let's keep it.
Yeah, Google Forms is more my. speed.
Okay, so we will all respond individually to this
Yeah.
as to whether we are
Okay.
available. Okay, perfect.
And then I wanted to bring up something, good of the order. is
No,
that-
we're not
okay,
quite there.
Okay,
Because we do need to open
Oh.
up for public comment again.
okay. Oh, all right.
Do you want to do public comment or go to the order first? Because we can do go to the order and then end with public comment.
Okay, let's,
Because
as long as we don't.
Yeah.
Okay. forget to do that. So do you have
Okay.
anything for good of the order?
I do. So we had talked, we were going to talk about short-term rentals on the 11th, I believe. And then it was canceled for the 11th because there was a statement that the housing group had decided to roll it into the whole code audit, but that was not a decision that was made unanimously. And I've talked to Marcy about it quite a bit, and I'm waiting for a response from her. So, you know, I
Have you
wrote,
talked about it?
I wrote her an
today?
email today. I
Okay.
wrote her an email today. Yeah, and so just because I think that that's something that we need to do sooner rather than later, because I think this code audit is going to go on for quite a while. And I don't think it's going to be done within a few months, the way it's going now. So, I can't say that for sure, that it would be happen, but it's very complicated. And so,
Well, one thing I think, Lisa, to address your concerns is that within that group, we'll just say,
talk to her about it. I think
And
we'll
if you-
discuss it with her. And see, maybe we can come to but it was a misstatement to say that there was a consent that, or imply that there was a consensus about that, because I have been talking to her about that continually. And I think that she just, you know, maybe has been so busy that she just assumed that
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 might have
was,
been a misunderstanding.
yeah, a misunderstanding, I think. So I think I need to, and the code group, and the focus group will have
Yeah.
to bring that up again and just discuss it, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, but it was supposed to be on the June 11th.
right. And so I guess since we're not going to have another focus group meeting probably till after June 11th, unless there was an email sent out today that I missed, then I think that we'll end up moving it, but I'm not sure to when, if we do move it.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything to prepare for you guys.
Right,
At this
there
point
really
anyways,
isn't,
so.
yeah, so,
And there could be a lot of work you guys can start with your housing group to bring back a little bit more detail on what kind of changes
Right.
we want to make too.
yeah, that's true, that'd be a good
But
place to
removing
talk
it from
about
the
it.
June 11th.
It's fine,
agenda
yeah,
makes
it
sense.
just bothered me that it was sort of a misunderstanding about there being a consensus to do that, because I don't think there was. We never really talked about it much. So,
Okay, so it's off to June 11th and then we'll,
Once you guys meet at the housing group, let me know when you want to put it back on.
okay, all right, thanks.
okay, anything else for good of the order? Yes, Bruce.
You and I did have a meeting with
Oh, that's
Senator,
Weber.
with Senator Weber.
Yeah, on Monday, we've met briefly on Zoom with Senator Weber. She just wanted to know what we would like her to help us with. Yeah, she did tell us about an ODOT meeting, a regional meeting that's happening June 18th in Tillamook. And we also have a city council meeting at 6 o'clock that evening for budget approval, but there's a roundtable discussion for ODOT between 2:30 and 4:30. And so I think Bruce and I are thinking of going, as long as we can guarantee to be back, obviously in time for city council.
Do you know what they're gonna talk about?
I'm just what the needs are for, I guess they go around to each jurisdiction and have a regional meeting. And I don't know if it's once, every 2 years or a year, but we thought it was important that we have some representation there.
It's to discuss all the main state roads,
Right.
regional,
So, yeah, so she talked about, 101, 26, 18,
30.
30, 22.
Hi. Okay.
Yeah.
Because ODOT controls also Hemlock, don't they? Or isn't there a dual jurisdiction or something?
No.
Not at all?
Must be a highway.
There was,
Yeah,
but now they have nothing to do with Hemlock. Okay.
yeah.
But yet, I'm just curious about that because they were asked to shield or were. Oh, I see how that works. Okay, so someone requested that a light get shielded and they said they had to go to the city to do it. That's why. So you can't make a request to ODOT for something on Hemlock.
Right.
You go through the city and the city requests it. Okay, all right.
Oh, did Jackie offer anything else?
I don't think so. Yeah,
Did you address any other concerns with her?
we talked about our funding for our water project
Yeah.
and that was about it, yeah. It was maybe 15 minute long
Okay.
discussion.
Well, thank you, Mark. Thank
Sure.
you, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Was that this week?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for good of the order? Okay, we will go ahead and open it back up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make public comment? And is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make public comment?
I have one hand up in the
Okay.
room.
Justin?
Dustin.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for staying with us all this
Good
time.
evening. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Wonderful.
remember-
Thank you.
Please
My name
start-
is,
Oh, go ahead. You got it.
yes, ma'am. My name is Justin Cohen. I'm a landowner at Antler Road and 6th Street. My mailing address is 6215 Amberview Street in Las Vegas, Nevada, 89135. Like some others in the room, I'm a lifelong conservationist, current Cannon Beach landowner and future resident. I want to share with you guys, and was intending to do it at the beginning of the meeting, my building plans that include an ADU, or as I'm now hearing, maybe a different term, that would be impacted by the proposed wetlands ordinance revisions. My plan for this land, since we had the good fortune of discovering it, was to build a home for my family and add 1 to 2 ADUs to support the housing shortage in our city. A shortage I've heard about constantly from my resident friends for the last decade that have been coming to Cannon Beach, no different than we have here in my hometown. I want to call your attention to a couple of concerns that I fear might not have been fully considered with these revisions, and I would humbly request the City Council consider them, say before moving forward, again, intended to be speaking at the beginning. Given the current ordinance, our nearly 2-acre parcel, our plan is to use less than 5% of our total land to construct our home and an ADU, preserving more than 95% of our 1.83 acres as undisturbed forest and wetland. We're not planning to build on 1 square foot of wetland, and we've designed our structures to minimize their impact on land and trees. With the proposed revisions, we wouldn't be able to build the proposed ADU, something the city needs, and we have plenty of land to deliver to the community. I ask that you consider allowances or carve-outs for larger lots so we're not unnecessarily restricting much needed workforce housing. I also ask that you consider the real ramifications of moving from a 5-foot to a 50-foot buffer. Given existing setback requirements from streets and neighbors, many other landowners will be impacted greatly. Thank you, Mayor and Council members, for listening to my statement. I appreciate there being time at the end for me to speak.
Can I get your address? I missed that at the beginning.
Sure, no worries. I'm a landowner at Antler Road and 6th Street. There is no address yet. And my mailing address is 6215 Amberview Street, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89135.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No
and
worries.
We're sorry you had to wait till the end of the meeting to make that.
It was a
comment.
fascinating learning experience. No worries.
You stayed awake the whole time?
I did somehow. It was good.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Okay,
No worries.
is there anyone else? Good.
How creative.
Wow.
Is there anybody
Brilliant.
else who would like to make public comment?
What a waste of time.